Great. So, Saturday morning, it feels great to welcome you all to our first Entrepreneur Talk. Entrepreneur Talk is an initiative to our own entrepreneurs and we at GINSERV believe that creating huge billion-dollar valuations. It's also about how each entrepreneur goes about looking at a problem that exists and building a solution that resolves pain points of the customers, creating value for all the stakeholders involved, generating employment, and architecting a story that not only inspires them, but all others too. So I'm Girish Remat. I head the business operations at GINSERV Bangalore. And for those who do not know GINSERV, I would like to give you a quick peek into who we are. We'll play a small video, and so that will tell you what kind of work we have been doing with this startup and how we have been integral part of the entire startup ecosystem. So I request my colleagues to play the video.
Technology government. GINSERV was established as Technology Business
Please
Incubator
replay.
in 2010 with the help of
Sir, you can hear the video?
the Department of Science and
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear the sound.
Okay.
GINSERV was established as Technology Business
Please
Incubator
play
in
it
the year
from the
2010 with the help of the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. GINSERV's vision has been about nurturing innovative ideas and accelerate tech startups. GINSERV is the brainchild of the leading educational group JSS Mahavidyapita, Mysuru. In a journey over a decade, GINSERV has successfully incubated over 150 tech startups. We run various programs and seed funding initiatives with the support from National Science and Technology Entrepreneurship Development Board. We've assisted these startups with great mentorships, raise funds, launch their products, and service in the market. This way, we've been an integral part of huge employment generation by our startups. Entrepreneurship is all about being resourceful. Many startups struggle because of the lack of access to very critical resources, networks, and connects. As an early player in the startup ecosystem, we know entrepreneurs and startups need an environment that encourages them to think beyond the obvious. One of the chief goals of GINSERV is to make the unfamiliar familiar to tech startups. We curate very exclusive and customized startup programs, workshops, and training programs from time to time. They can be about technology trends and validating business ideas with the help of experts, pivoting challenges, or just helping them and guiding them on how to scale up like our GINSERVlator. GINSERV's spacious plug-and-play workplace is a 55,000 square feet premises in a campus spread in an acre and well-thought-out services takes away the burden of operationalizing a startup. This way, an entrepreneur can focus on growing his team and scaling up business. GINSERV is centrally located in the Central Business District in Bangalore. Peer-to-peer learning environment. Most importantly, one gets great opportunity to bounce ideas with the other startup founders. You get to see a sense of community and the great camaraderie amongst our startups of GINSERV. We create unique programs and services from time to time. The idea is to unlock the true potential of a startup. We welcome tech startups out there to join GINSERV's exciting community of entrepreneurs and startups. Get benefited.
Great. Thank you, Bharat. So you now know where to come if you want to incubate, grow, and accelerate your startup. So having said that, let's move on. I'm very happy to welcome our own incubatee and our first guest on this Entrepreneurial Talk, Ganesh Subramaniam. co-founder and Vice President R&D of Murata Vios Ltd. Today, we will learn about his story, his journey and experiences in making Vios Medical what it is today. He's an instrumentation and electrical engineering graduate from the SJC of 1991 batch. SJC, as you know, that it's another crown of JSS group of institutions. So, to tell you briefly about Ganesh, he brings about 3 decades of system and product engineering, management experience, products and medical products. He has helped design and developed several products from the concept to market for worldwide customers. So we'll hear more from him as we go along. Without further ado, thank you, Ganesh, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Girish, and of course the entire GINSERV and GINSERV organizing team as well for giving me this opportunity to be part of this program. As I understand, this is the first talk in this series, and I'm even more privileged to be, one of the first members to, be part of this program, and it's called the Entreprerna
Talk. Yes.
So that's even more, exciting and honorable to me. And I would be very much happy to share our experience, even more so because we started the journey right here at GINSERV. Okay, way back in 2012.
Yeah,
so that's even
great.
more. I'll be more than happy to share our experience being here and being, the going through this whole process, even from right from an ideation concept level to the market, and see the product through various ups and downs and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's good. And also, I think take this opportunity to congratulate and wish all the teams who are part of this GINSERV program, 2.0 program, to achieve their intentions and take this forward, and whatever their ventures in may it be more successful.
Yeah, great. So that's wonderful. So now to begin with, I think if you can just give us a peek into your career beginning and how till you kind of started your entrepreneurial journey, how that went about. I mean, like what was, like where you started and after your engineering, and then, and also you can tell about a bit of your upbringing. So that kind of got you interested in engineering.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's a long way back. So, yeah. So as you had alluded in the beginning, I graduated from SJC Mysore in 1991. Post my graduation, I didn't want. I wanted to do something and get on to business, like start working and see the experience of the apply my learnings on the ground. So I didn't consciously pursue any further studies, and I thought I'll do it later or something like that. Okay, probably at that time. But I was really passionate about engineering even before joining. I used to tinker about a lot of stuff, but that actually helped me through the process itself, through the graduation itself. And by the way, I was one of those guys, who had early had a license wireless kind of design my own systems in that at that time. So so the journey started, and after graduation I joined this company called Tektronix. Tektronix is basically a world leader in test and measurement equipments. They do a lot of work on the measurement equipments used in R&D labs. So I started as a electrical engineer, an applications engineer for them, and to help deploy and customize their products in R&D labs. I predominantly used to work, visit a lot of these government labs, ISRO, and defense institutions to help integrate their products into their environment, and also automate a lot of these capabilities into their infrastructure. I think somewhere around that line, Tektronix also wanted some help uh, with their disassemblers. I mean, they were, I think, at that time working with leading microprocessor companies like Intel, AMD. Just at that time, just got spun off from Intel. And um, so with these flurry of these technologies coming in, they wanted some help with the development of tools for the microcontrollers. So they were looking out for people, and they couldn't find in India. They couldn't find the right profile, so they tried to look inwards, like within the company, if they could find someone. So that's when I tried to get involved, and I took some time off to do some study, and then applied for the job, and I got it. I mean, in the sense that I applied for the same job internal to the company, and I got an opportunity to work on the disassembler software, which is basically a component that actually acquires data when the system is actually running on the microprocessor board. We do the disassembly, reverse assembly of the opcodes back into assembly and C language. So it requires a little bit of different skill sets, more aligned with not just the hardcore software, but we needed a lot of hardware knowledge as well to develop something. So that helped ground my foundations on the systems side. And later, I post Tektronix, I moved on to work on a lot of communication products while at companies like HCL. They had acquired HP's division in communication division, and I worked on some leading communication products. At that time was frame relay, etc. 25, and that opportunity gave me a kind of sense of developing products from ground up, right from hardware design, system software, and things like that, right? So that actually gave the core foundations for any the further product engineering work, so which I was predominantly doing at Wipro. And although it was called different divisions, but the key focus of my work in that at Wipro for 13 years, I spent around 13 and a half years purely working on helping customers develop products, and mostly from across various domains, mostly from concept to from ideation level to actual marketable products. So that's where I was the lead architect in the product engineering division at Wipro. So that's my personal journey until then. Then, of course, it was around the time when maybe in my early 40s, typically people tend to go through an introspection and as to what lies in future, and am I doing the right thing at that time. So it was just around that time then we decided to do something different, not the usual stuff. So that's when I had an opportunity to uh, you know uh, to meet people who were part of my network there, who were actually known to me, and when I was as a working relationship with them. um, and that actually started this Vios journey. I mean, pretty much yeah.
So, before you kind of, I mean, like one is that you had this kind of um, somewhere you kind of took a stop, and then you kind of started thinking, where am I? Especially when you are with a large company like Wipro. Uh, was there some kind of an incident that kind of triggered for you to kind of think on these lines, or was there some kind of some inspirational thing that like where you felt that like now this is something that I need to go and do it out there?
To be frank, I was not very clear, but I wanted to do something different, not the routine stuff that I used to do almost like 13 plus years. And even before that, of course, that was a learning experience. But over time, this required a lot of travel for me, from especially this required visiting customers in their own labs and working with them. and then bringing, building up the team, offshore team. And then I was not playing a big management role, although I was involved in the technical aspects of making sure the creation of the product development itself was where I was involved in. But this routine aspect kind of didn't give me the motivation to continue to do the same thing going forward. So I was not sure what I had to do, but it was, incidentally, it was at that time I used to work for this company in US. This I mean, through Wipro, of course. It's called Medtronic. And there we used to actually, we built a programmer, a product which is basically a implant programmer, which is basically used to program the implantables in patients. A little side story to that, because Medtronic used to spend around almost like $8,000 to $10,000 for every implant. Every hospital has to buy that product, and Medtronic were forced to give that for free for many times. So they wanted to relook at this, and they wanted to reduce the cost of this product. So what we were involved in is to basically re-engineer this whole concept. I mean, really, literally do this design from grounds up, and do it in a way which was a sub $1,000. I mean, that was our target. And this was led by Ed Manika, Yatindra Manika, who actually was the head of that division. And having worked almost like 2 years until then with that group, I had a good working relationship with Ed Manika. He was a sort of a visionary, a serial entrepreneur, who actually came into Medtronic from another acquisition, where he was a CEO there, and he was the co-founder there. So he actually, that was called Corventis, which was another medical product, and Medtronic acquired, and he came into Medtronic much before that as well. So he was, there was something lingering in him, and at that time I had told him that I probably may not come to Medtronic again. I want to look at some other things. So that actually sparked him, and he said, okay, let's get together and figure out what we can do. And incidentally, there was a time when I had a lot of interactions, and he had one dream which was sort of unfulfilled. That's what I could read from what he's trying. See, Corventis was his little baby, and he actually nurtured it for long, but it didn't realize its full potential of actually addressing an unmet need in that market. And he was very clear that there is a space for monitoring low cost-effective, efficient monitoring solution in India and US. And he was really after it, and Corventis did not meet its expectation. We were at Wipro, were all really, much of my team members, even here today, were part of that team as well. We were also part of that Corventis developed that product for them, but he didn't realize the full potential for him. So he felt that we can always redo this, but do it in a way that actually addresses a real need, and takes into account a lot of learnings that he had understood post that acquisition, and basically build this all over again from ground up. So this thing, he said, okay, why don't you get involved and take care of the start the India center for us, and you can come on board and things like that. I said, okay, that's something is what I would not done the entire I've not seen that part of that space really bring a startup, nurturing a startup from grounds up, is something that got me interested, and I pursued that.
So I think your co-founder Ed Manika gave you the reason, kind of get out of the rigmarole of the corporate life, get out of the typical routine of traveling countries to country, and then kind of think of solving a problem, which was basically, I mean, like, while as as a founder of Corventis, he felt that like it has still not really tapped into that kind of a problem, and then I think he must have seen something in you to kind of you to come together. So it was only you and Ed Manika, or there were somebody else who kind of decided on this kind of journey?
No, certainly not. Incidentally, I also, there was another, person, Amit Patel, who is all our CEO. A graduate with entrepreneurial experience as well. He was also at Medtronic and not really, when he was kind of working and helping Ed with in some of the activities. I happened to meet him as well in during some of these interactions, and we also had a few other, to start the journey. We had other connects who were actually established. There's one gentleman who was very experienced in medical design, especially designing medical products, who had done for a lot of established companies in the US. So he was an principal electrical engineer. He was coming on board, and we had to solve the signal processing and algorithm side. So we had another couple of guys who had their own company at that time. It was called Digital Intelligence. So they wanted to help out in one way, although they still pursued to work as part of that company, but they wanted to see if we can collaborate with them to build some portions of the signal processing areas. They could work on that. So the team as such was although we knew each other, Ed, myself, Amit, Scott, you also used to work for Corvantis. So although we didn't have direct interactions with him at that time, but still all these common background helped establish that real connect among us. So that.
So this started in the year 2013, if I am right. This whole kind of ideation, or 2012 or something.
Yeah, so the ideation process itself started sometime, I would say, around July of 2012. I mean, somewhere around that, because we had a critical intervention in post-May. I was in US for some time, and it kind of started around that time. And then, but actually, it took some time for us all to come together and really start this platform. And that was not until the end of 2012. Okay, so where we actually started this company in the US, and then I came back to India after my brief stay there, and then I came back and then decided to move forward from my side. Okay.
Oh, okay. So when you kind of got back home and announced this to the family, or did you announce it to the family earlier? And what was the kind of reaction? I mean, like, have you gone crazy leaving such a good job with Wipro and traveling to countries and all that? Why you are doing this kind of madness?
No, I had not told them until maybe early 2013. I mean, it was once I had decided that I will make that move. That is after I came back, and early 2013 January onwards, I had another friend of mine who used to work with me in Wipro. We actually developed this concept in his residence. And I used to visit over weekends and the late evenings. We actually built a prototype. So until such time, and as these things were moving in that direction, I felt it's all coming along, and I think I need to take that call. Then that's when I had a conversation with my family members, and initially they were they were not sure what about that, but I think I gave that confidence that it is I think I can do it. We can do it. I have the right guys around with me. We can move on. But in any case, I also assured them if things doesn't work out, I can always come back. So that backing was there. But yeah, so this was kind of, they were not aware in the beginning. I really made sure I got it to a point that I was confident, and people around me, and including people who I can rely on, people who can come bring them on board. I really got that confidence and then move forward.
Okay. That's great. I mean, I think it was not so dramatic, I guess. I mean, the way you told me, and you had done all your homework and how to kind of present. So it was kind of, so they accepted it coolly.
Yeah, yeah, that's what happened. But yeah.
Good. So now having done all this and kind of now you had come back and then there was a very clear goal in your mind. But before, when you began the ideation and you started putting all the pieces together, what was the kind of because you were a group of techies having worked in different markets and having had some working relationship. What was that one single-minded vision that you all kind of converged in and said that, okay, this is what we will do for the next, whatever number of years? And so tell us those, some specific steps that you took in terms of converging your vision and then, going and putting those pieces together to see the kind of the first building block of your journey.
Yeah, sure. So I think the idea resonated with us. I mean, that's one thing that good about someone from, especially from Silicon Valley or some places who have worked there and built that relationship with people around. And it's not the relationship at an investor level; it's relationship more, especially in the medical world. We need to really understand the problems that are there in the healthcare. Okay, not just in the US but as well as here. So somewhere I felt that we were all mostly focused on product engineering, right? I mean, there is a area that people like Ed and realize that there is a market opportunity here, that there is not, in the sense, the market opportunity for healthcare. And in this specific case, the opportunity lies in managing the a specific area, like typically, if you see the real problem we are still trying to address now is to address the problem of churn at the in the hospital, especially how they manage the surgeries versus ICU beds, availability of ICU beds. Okay, that's one challenge that they always have. They work on a metric for length of stay kind of metric within the hospital as well as in the ICU. So there is always a challenge for them to manage that workflow, surgeries versus availability of ICU beds. Okay, then there is also a real need outside of the ICUs, because from whatever was available data points is that it pointed, and whatever interactions we had at that time with the healthcare management people, was that there was significantly high mortality rate outside of the ICU, death rates. And that probably one of the reason would be the less oversight of those patients who are likely moved out of the ICU environments. So there's not much oversight from nursing and other things, although there is as much best effort care given to them, but that care is not sufficient for them to give timely care, do timely interventions and things. So there is a need for us to really have a very cost effective, lightweight monitoring solution that doesn't burden either the hospital folks or the patients themselves.
Patients.
So it's a very cost effective model, a flexible model, which will be easily deployable and which will improve the monitoring capabilities from the caregivers, in this case nursing staff or hospitals, to the patient, so they can actually get early warnings or signs of deterioration in the patients, and likely move them back into ICUs or move them into provide better care. So this was one opportunity, and that area was not really addressed by any existing solution. I mean, there were people who were doing point solution, but we felt that is that space we need to focus on, and that's where this whole concept of patient monitoring idea came in. And much of the folks who were with us had especially Scott, who was the electrical engineer, had the capability to build to understand the design perspectives from making it very, which can actually, it's one thing to design a solution, but the other, it's a completely different beast to make sure that this design can withstand the needs of the standards that we need to meet in order to ensure patient safety and I think it's and reliability of the product. So it's entirely complete different aspect. Scott was a very well engineer who had that knowledge, so that's where he brought in that expertise from that space. So yeah, so when we realize that this is a market space that we need to, and this was from our own interactions with not just the US, with our with people out here in India, we found that this is really an unmet need in most hospital settings across both US and India, probably even other geographies as well.
So it kind of not only addressed a kind of business problem where there was a kind of a certain amount of churn that it helped to kind of stop and also look into these safety matters. But it also, saved a lot of lives. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah,
While you got about solving a business problem, but somewhere it kind of when patients moved out of ICU or the wards and when they went home. So tell us about this product and the type of the kind of work it does and how it is effective in kind of
yeah,
moving
sure,
products.
sure. So the having identified that space, we it's not just that. I mean, we wanted to make sure that we are not any run of the mill monitoring solution. Okay, we set our eyes and goals on FDA. I mean, in fact, even during the initial phases of the ideation, and we used to have several discussions post work among this team in the US when I was there, in coffee shops and other, where not to really discuss a lot about not just these problem areas. We discussed about what challenges, what are the what should be our the structure of the team that we need to have, the communication model, what sort of reliability aspects that we need to consider, what is even fundraising options that we have on the ground, what sort of financing need to be there to support this whole development process, where it will be most cost effective, whether US or here, for what type of work. A lot of these things we had actually sort of discussed, and we had a fair blueprint on how we need to navigate this forward. Okay, so in India, what we did initially was to really so the first thing is, we didn't have anything on our plate. I mean, essentially we had this idea, and we the concept was the early prototype was there for us to actually show to potential customers. The first thing, we came back to India, and I decided to move, jump ship. And during the transition process, somewhere in July of 2013, I was the first employee. I mean, I just came on board, and once the initial company formation and other structure was laid out, I had an opportunity to visit a lot of these customer sites. And one of the first customer we met was Care Hospital in Hyderabad. We had an opportunity to meet the key people there, and somewhere this whole idea resonated very well with them. So they said, okay, yes, this is what we were looking for, and it looks like there is not much happening here, and we can always join you or work with you to conceptualize this product from ground up. So at that point, we had certain attributes that the product should have, in terms of what it should monitor on the patient, what kind of what forms a critical parameter for monitoring patient outside of the ICU. So pretty much we had most of them covered: the ECG, the respiratory rate, the oxygen level in your blood, your temperature as a key aspect of it. So these, and it has to be lightweight, wearable, which can be quickly deployed by the nursing staff with very less burden on being laid on them. Um, Besides this, one of the other challenges they were facing was, while this will just provide you a ability to monitor the patient, there's the other challenges we found that there's a lot of coordination aspects. The challenges with typically in a hospital, any hospital setting, as many of us would know, is that a patient is not just monitored by one person, right? There's a multiple nursing who comes in shifts. There's a duty doctor. There's a somebody who's a specialist who comes over, and there's a lot of coordination challenges of coordination between these people. So there is most of them are manual in nature. They keep record of those things, and even
Yeah.
monitoring these patients on a regular basis all manually done. The graphing is done manually in terms of how the trend of the patients happen over period of time when they are monitored. They actually do this manually. So a lot of these were manual process, and that I think we thought, okay, we'll not just focus on the sensor part of it. While we do monitor, we help monitor, we should also address the coordination aspects of it, which is also key to monitoring the patient, right, in a much more effective manner. So we went on to build application components around it. So essentially, at the core of the system, basically our system comprises of a sensor, a wearable device, which is basically can be quickly put on the patient's body. You have a few electrodes that you connect, which is known to any nursing staff, use the standard way. And then the system, that is a wearable device, will actually communicate with a bedside monitor, which is running our customized software, which is receiving this data and doing the signal processing and displaying that almost in close to real time. And this data gets moved to a server, and from the server you actually have several possible options. So you could have a nursing stations which is actually monitoring more than 12 to 15 patients can be monitored at single time. They can really see what's happening on patients that are there in the ward, and any warnings, any deterioration of their bioparameters get signaled immediately to these users. Then there could be a physician who may be not physically present in the hospital site. He may be off to some place or another place, but he can still monitor his patients on his mobile, and he can leave instructions of what the nursing staff can do, nursing staff can communicate information about the patient back to these caregivers. So there's a lot of coordination. This is sort of a group care in the most adequate manner.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was how the
That's
solution was built around it. Yeah.
that's great. So that's where, I mean, see, especially healthcare, medtech, and the pharmaceutical, these industries, they're quite they have this very mature regulatory and regulatory system, right? And you went to kind of test out your idea to one customer and kind of did this. But like, didn't you kind of look at this whole regulatory mechanism, because you might have good product, but like, if you're not going to get through that, so what were the kind of challenges, and then how you went about maneuvering?
Yeah, good point. So that was one of the foundation of our product, so to say. And we all coming from medical background, that we have done medical products in the past, like either outside. I mean, each one of us had that knowledge that, okay, there has to be some there is a regulation body who will regulate and decide whether to market this product or not, whether it's ready for release or not. And that's the end goal, right? I mean, eventually we have to get there, and that body has a set of standards that we have to meet. I mean, most mature companies only until that time are able to achieve all the capabilities of the standards. So having this sort of background prior helped us to define upfront. We had a lightweight process in place. I mean, if you look at FDA, the 510K, the post-market approval, or not the notification, they call it the 510K approval stage, is basically defines a set of standards. Is a consensus standard which will say, okay, you need to, not just there is a process standards, there is a security, it's compatibility with the existing systems around you, like are there any interferences around you around, that is caused by this. And in terms of safety, like if you are having a wearable, now anybody can, if the patient may need a shock, like a defibrillator shock, right? That time, how do you can't really help. Your system should be either be able to withstand that shock. I mean, you have a small tiny system, you should be able to withstand that shock, or you should be able to, you should not come in the way of that process, right? I mean, that's a typical hospital setting. So how you are able to meet all the levels of reliability, safety, performance, and other environmental aspects of the system was critical. So that is one, the technology side of it. There's also process standards, so like how good you are with respect to doing what you are doing, right? I mean, are you doing the right design controls? Are the review controls in places? Are you having proper audits of your own processes in happening? Okay, so this is a process level standard that we need to conform to. So the good, having known this priori, helped us define what is the bare minimum we need to set in place, so that we can accomplish all of this with whatever minimum resources that we have. Mind you, at that time we were just four people, four of
Oh,
us in India, and maybe another four or five of them, and most of them in the US were all consultants. So they had other projects as well, or other companies with it. But predominantly, when we started, we are about four people here. And with this minimum, we need to make sure that we are able to meet the base minimum, and then we are able to move things forward. Okay, so that, in a way, setting those things in place, and setting those criteria internally, as well as making sure that at some point in time we have to be ready to make that submission to FD510K. Okay, so we also had to go through, in order to achieve these technology standards, we interacted with a lot of local labs. We worked with TV Greenland here here in Bangalore, to make sure that we accomplish all of that. But getting to that lab is a pretty expensive process. So we had to devise our own sort of techniques and methods to do the pre-validation on premise. Okay, within our lab with the minimum capability, or even access to there was actually a company in GINSERV right in your basement, who used to do some work we used their strengths to do some of our testing work. Okay, so there
wow.
some kind of collaboration still happened, in order to make sure that we are doing enough on on premise within here in our premise, before we actually go to TUV and get it done there. Okay, so that challenge we had to go through and process. And we also used to take an hour slot from TUV. We used to go there and test, and then come back with results and refine our design, share that design with our counterparts in the US, like Scott and others, and further make refinements to the design and submit it. So this whole process of evolving the product and going through this process of interacting, making it more efficient use of our resources, try to do in house, and whenever need, we actually need to go to. So that way, I mean, if you see, Amit was very good in business, and raising funds, interacting with investors, and also making sure that we use the best out of every dollar. Like every dollar spent is worth it. So that kind of traction was also there. So that helped us to optimize our resources internally, and go only when we think we are confident to pass the test, we go there. So so
So one thing I keep hearing is what you say, efficiently using our resources or optimization of our resources, right? And also one of your co-founder was kind of working on basically trying to get you the required working capital. So give us some examples of, when you say optimization of, very limited resources that you had. And also the thing is that, when you started this whole, because you might have started with some bootstrap finances, but when you actually went to investors pitching this whole story, then when there was a traction.
Yeah. So when I said you touched upon this optimization of resources, I think, I mean, that's a when I say forming a team is a very critical part of your success. I mean, they define your success or failure. I mean, so making sure you have the right team members. I mean, if I had to expand, I cannot work alone, so I had to bring people on board. And it's important that people don't come, don't look for people who have skills alone. I mean, they need to have that maturity and that passion, as well as the the right attitude to actually say, okay, I believe in this concept, I believe in you, let's do it. So I had to handpick, and I from my own experience of working with many people in my past, I had the opportunity to bring them on board. I mean, of course, they also had to go through the same level of thing as much as I did, but maybe they did it at a later stage. But certainly that same experience they would have gone through of, am I doing the right thing, and is it worth it? And believe me, thankfully they have that faith in me, and of course the concept as a whole and the product, and they came on board, and still even today they are with me. Okay, so they are with the company. So that way, that synergy is all about how you are able to nurture the thing, concept, passion, and attitude of that thing. That was one. And obviously, in terms of raising funds, I mean, this required I would say my CEO, Amit, did a commendable job, and he literally used to, at one point in time we were wondering how many visits he's making to US, from US to India. And he used to almost fly almost every month. Okay, so his family used to be back home, and literally that shows the kind of the urge to succeed. Okay, so he used to come here, and I used to accompany him for various investor pitches, meeting various customers, potential service providers who can actually help us with many things. So these were mostly our thing. And the main thing we found, at least from whatever I could, he could summarize it. Many times offline we used to chat, and he summarized that it's all about the there is always we always be very optimistic when we meet when an institutional investor. Okay, but usually it doesn't show up in their face, that mostly it's only about it's about 1 or 2% of success rate will be there. I mean, they usually wowed with the product and the concept, but more or less it dies out there. I mean, we need that ability to continue to stay put, and then convince. And we had some very good non-tech persons came on board with just believing us. I mean, and we had one very excellent gentleman based in Bangalore who actually believed in our concept. He was a lawyer by profession, and he came on board, invested to bootstrap us in the initial. Okay, and so he was a lawyer. He was a person who used to export flowers to. He had his own farm. And incidentally, my first our first Vios, I mean, even before we joined GINSERV, I used to work from his office with flowers around me. So that was kind of a good omen in the sense. So just to cut this thing, yeah. So there are people who believed in us just because we had that passion and the thing. But getting that is one aspect of dealing with the what do you call, the investor motivation is usually different when you go for an institutional investor, because they have multiple things on their
Correct.
portfolio will they are just looking at one of the other things. So that the mindset is different. So we had to go through those challenges. Of course, that was ups and downs of our journey as well. So,
Tell us a few of these ups and downs where they might have made you to kind of give up this whole thing, because someone like Amit coming all the time and then making investor pitches, and then, as you said, maybe initially there was some kind of it took some time to convince people. But were there any moments that you felt that like it's not going the way that you guys thought of, and
Yeah.
did was there any moment that let me get back somewhere?
So there were moments galore, I would say. I mean, a lot of a lot of stress points in the system, especially when there are resources and there is investors always wanting us to succeed in every step. There are times when we had the first submission for FDA, we had to go through a lot of challenges. Even we didn't have products ready for testing so that we can get the test results out before submission. And because we missed one aspect, that our material was not biocompatible. So we had to really, that was a Christmas time and people were not shipping the materials here. So we already had, so a lot of those challenges where we had to, the real things that we couldn't achieve when we had shortage of resources, but we had difficulty to get past that point. The as far as financing and other aspect goes, I mean, there was another set of challenges, but we were initially bootstrapped and we went on to Series A with about 2.5 to 2 plus million USD, and that was like getting to a point where we had just about a 1 month of runtime, and we were in the process of raising our Series B, which we had not closed until but we are not. I think there was tense moments, like whether we want to get further down this road or what it is like. So there was some challenges in the financing aspect as well, but I mean, I can say that umpteen sort of investors pitches we have given, and incidentally, we also had an opportunity to, someone outside of the whole investor community, like the World Bank, came up with this IFC. They had this IFC event, which was basically a matchmaking event set up in Delhi. They were trying to promote encouraging startups to, especially in the healthcare medtech sector, uh, to address the needs of the hospitals or other clinical environments in developing countries. So they had a big fund, and one of they used to do this matchmaking event in every country. And India, they had this IFC event, and out of 300 or odd participants, we were selected among the top 15. Okay, and we came into the top 15, and we had an opportunity to deploy a solution in, and for the first time we were deploying, and that time
When was this?
other this was in 2015 sort of thing. Yeah. So although we had done some pilots earlier with other things, but this was the first time when we actually got the opportunity to deploy this in real sites outside of our primary site in Hyderabad, right? I mean, we had other potential customers coming on board, like we had few in Delhi and few in Bangalore as well. So this actually helped us give us a lot of feedback, which is very important, like what the customer feels about the product and what kind of refinements we can do to the solution. So that actually helped us define the next phase of the product, like the generation 2, which we started working on to iron out those potential deficiencies in the first generation product. And then and incidentally, today we still continue to market our generation 2 product, which is still in the market today with so that is.
Good. So, so when you actually, I mean, I get that you took almost about 2.5, 3 years, close to 3 years before you kind of actually deployed the product. So when you started making started seeing some revenues, and what was the kind of a business model behind this whole, when you went out to market, meeting the customers and convincing?
Yeah, so the idea of our core business model was that, okay, what we understood is there's always a pressure on the hospital management to, they have budgetary constraints, like they also have fixed price for for every bed patient may occupy and things like that. There's a lot of restriction in that space as well. So one of the thing we had was that we use a subscription model where we don't the hospital don't upfront have to purchase, we deploy the solution, and for as many beds that they need to be deployed, and then we actually let the charge the patient or on a per day basis, or charge the hospital on a monthly basis. So these are different models that we had considered, and we were even looking at providing additional services on top of it, which was basically a remote monitoring service, which will allow an external party, like and like we had a company in Chennai who used to do basically monitoring as a service. That is, he used to get data from ICU environments in Australia, US. That data used to get real-time streamed to Chennai, and he had a battery of physicians and people, clinical thing, who will actually look at that data and communicate back whether the seriousness of their thing, and they will do the assessment here. There's a big center in Chennai. So he came on board looking at our product. He said, okay, he used to do services based on whatever equipments are there. The data used to come and he just provides the service. So he was interested to provide similar service for our solution as well. So this was like once, so that actually a kind of added a potential revenue for us in the services space. So this is how we structured our model. And in terms of revenues, yes, the initial, it was not as initially expected, like what we thought. This was, someone could afford this solution at a much low cost. There is always a resistance to change, like basically that's probably because the nursing and other people clinical are already stressed in that environment. Okay. And when there is any change in workflow, like okay, you have to do this instead of this, there's always a typical resistance that change. Okay, I'm used to doing this, why should I change to do something else? Okay, so because that gives me much more. So there's always a resistance to change unless it comes from top down, like okay, you have no other choice but you use this. Okay, so this top down required has to be more. I mean, we had to be more, we have to show our market presence, and the acceptance has to be there from the management to say, okay, Vios is a solution, let me deploy in my wards. This is, we are just looking at where we could use what kind of use cases, and we deploy in that sort of scenarios. Okay, we just so there was always the resistance to change and things like that. So that really what we initially thought as will be something that will be useful, it kind of we had to make adjustments to our business model, the pricing strategy and things like that, so to allow accept, and also entice them with additional capabilities that they may not have seen typically in other capabilities. So these additional pathways helped us get into some more, expand our thing, and we had a few sites in Delhi which we got into, and then the revenue started flowing in, like we started billing them and things like that. So that we also have started graduating to presence in the US. So where the US adoption is typically, once we have a regulated product, it's usually at least the entry is pretty assured, but then we also have to show that we meet all the other expectations that they may have on their sites. Okay, so that process also started. So we can always say, okay, there is a showcase center in India where we do monitoring. So that adoption also happened to some extent in the US as well.
Good. That's so. So you kind of handled the competition. I'm sure competition must have been there, directly or indirectly. So you kind of came out with certain offerings that made your whole solution to the hospital much more easier to kind of accept it than kind of plainly deny you the opportunity.
Yeah. So there's certainly, I mean, competition is good because it also emphasizes that the need is real. I mean, we are not like alien to that use case or something. I mean, there is somebody who is also trying to address that market. So it also gives us that assurance that we are not doing something which the market does not demand. So that is one good thing about competition. The second thing is we did have competition, but we needed to be different from them, right? I mean, we need to show that we are not the same capabilities at what they had. So this whole capability to build a platform solution around it, the ability to coordinate the success, and our system was much more flexible to be deployed and used with very minimum resources. Okay, what was available at that time. And the second thing is the ability to provide service monitoring as a service. So these are add-ons that actually opened their they said, okay, looks different from what the other guys are offering. So this helped us bring some differentiation in from the competition.
Great. So when did you now see, because you all began this whole journey as Vios, a group of techies coming together and then starting this Vios Medical. When you attracted, now you are Murata Vios, right? When you tell us bit about Murata and how you kind of attracted Murata and then you got into that marriage.
Yeah, sure. So I think it was probably when we were trying to raise funds for a Series B, because as I said, we were like almost like getting close to. So instantly the first request came through GINSERV only. In fact, at that time, your predecessor got a mail from Rebright Networks, Rebright Partners or somebody, and then he said, okay, there is a Japanese company who is scouting for medical startups. Okay, would you be? And we found that one of the startup is in your place, and then can we connect with them? And that's when incidentally Amit knew that guy. He used to be his classmate in Stanford. So one of the guys in thing who was actually leading this. So that's how we got thing. So they came and we actually had this roadshow for them. Like we had actually presented the demo. We took them to our customer sites where incidentally these pilots were deployed. They had an opportunity to meet those customers, and we took them to potential partners, like who and how, and we kind of put our processes, everything threadbare for them to understand what we are doing. And then I think they did invest to some extent. I'm not sure about how much they did on the Series B side, but yeah, they did something to get these things moving. And then things were silent for some time from their side. And then when we went, I think at some point in time, we went back to them and said, okay, we are also looking to raise more funds for marketing and production of our system. So that's when they came and they said, evaluated, and then the process of the due diligence is something that they wanted to carry out before they say in which way they want to go, whether they want to take the investment or they want to acquire us. So they started this process. Yeah.
So what's the synergy with Murata? What's their specialty, and how you kind of how this whole marriage is kind of helping you?
Yeah, sure. So the Murata is, it's a big player, and essentially in the discrete components area, they are one of the world leaders in that space. They focus a lot on, their strengths are extremely high on manufacturability of components and systems. They're very good in manufacturing and especially miniaturizing stuff. And then they are also significantly they have done a lot of acquisition themselves. Like they are trying to look at other market opportunities where not just the component side, where they have very sizable market share, but they are also looking at other possible opportunities in the product space. So they were scouting for energy, I think automotive and medical. These were the three focus areas for them at that time. And the what interested them in with Vios was that we had the from their own interactions with the right stakeholders, they see that this had the potential to meet the expectations of the users. And at the same time, we had the robustness in our processes, and the other mindset that we have, the team around us, that we people, especially the team around us, was having rich experience in this space, that actually triggered them to take this move forward.
Okay, that's wonderful. I mean, because I think you had put in all the hard work to kind of get this kind of attention, where a globally leading manufacturer could see this potential and then they could come and do this.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, so
having said that, last, I mean, since we are kind of, short time, I think the last two questions that I have is one is, did you, in terms of launching the product, did you go about, doing a huge splash because now you had raised some funds, you had got a, new international partner with you? Did you do that, or you just went about, building your use cases and then acquiring customers? What was that, whole business development process or marketing process that you could briefly, just give us some peek into?
you're saying post acquisition or prior?
Prior also, and maybe post, how it kind of, if there was any change in the way you were doing things.
Yeah, so I think the prior acquisition, I think that we were in the process of making our presence felt. Like we had someone on board who's actually would help us demonstrate and get use cases, and help try to deploy in customer, identify potential customer sites and things like that. That was already a plan in motion, but we had to raise additional resources to actually meet that expectation of the customer. We need production capability, increase our production capability, so that we can actually deploy it. So it was kind of a chicken and egg solution. So we had to raise that resources so that we can achieve that end result. But post acquisition, that scenario changed, because Murata comes with a lot of expertise in manufacturing, and they have very hardcore knowledge about systems and hardware, and miniaturizing and building reliability into the hardware. So currently, what we are also doing is to basically ruggedize our system in terms of it's based on the uh, expertise that Murata brings in. At the same time, we have enough resources on board to raise our make our presence felt in the market, right? So that all this post acquisition, we have increased our team size and brought in more people on board. We have a sales and marketing team, and teams which will help us make our presence felt in both in social media and offline. So online, offline, all these things are already well established today. So that helps when we have enough resources, and that also gives us leverage us opportunities to leverage Murata's strengths. But still, unlike any most other acquisitions, it's not. They still, we feel that this acquisition will help us further make our presence felt much more impactfully, because then now we have a much more reliable product, reliable system on premise, with and resources to back that support.
That's great. So now looking back, I mean, it's you have come a long journey, and now looking back, are there any few things that you would like to go back and redo those things, or the way you did it, you could have done it better, so that you could have shrunk the time, or maybe. So what are those 2-3 specific things?
Yeah, so I think first thing is don't over engineer. I mean, that's one field we felt is that we have to make it perfect. No system is perfect. Okay, I think most engineers, especially engineers as entrepreneurs, fall into this trap of making sure that is, I mean, identify a sweet spot a user need, identify the bare minimum features that you need to make sure the users adopt that, which is really required for the users. I mean, if you take any product, I mean, it's just about 20-25% of the features get used by the users. The rest doesn't. So identify that subset of that thing, and then focus on that. I think what we do as engineers is basically make sure we accommodate as much as possible and pack it, and then make sure every aspect. So that gives you a lot of room for failure. I mean, and we need to iterate a lot, and that means more resources and time you spend. So that is one thing that we would probably, if any new company want to focus on, especially in the hardware, IoT and other space, they should identify a real sweet spot and focus on their energies on, and focus on that minimum viable product only. Okay, that is one aspect. Of course, on the any medical device development is a very you need to set yourself a high bar, because you cannot be accepted in environments like critical environments like healthcare when you have a rudimentary solution which doesn't have enough clearances from approved bodies, right? So you need to make sure that you set a high bar, you have the right set of team to back you, as well as enough resources to get that product out for that users. So all of this, I think, is important. At the same time, you need to focus on quality, performance, and safety of your product when you're doing medical designs. So that is one aspect. Of course, you'll always face this is with any development. Anything is, you'll always challenges for raising funds. Resources are not unlimited. You need to manage with what you have and do the best of what you have within the constraints of this framework.
Thank you. I think I would, given a choice, I would love to go on and keep asking you this question. And I'm sure, I mean, because you are also have various things to attend to. So the thing is that what we can do is now we can take some few questions from our audience, and to tell you very frankly and honestly, it has been a wonderful conversation, and I have picked up so many things during this discussion and your story. It's been very insightful, inspirational. I'm sure a lot of our audience have picked, certain nuggets from this whole thing, and they will apply to their journeys. And if they want to kind of, if they would like to talk to you about some of these aspects later offline, hope you will be able to address that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would be glad and happy to help out, or share my experiences and knowledge to whatever startups that they have. You have one at Insulator, not a problem. We can always work that out. But yeah, I think overall this was good interaction, and it brought me, gave me a platform to revive my journey as well. So and also help build this network, and help with any of the members that they may want, and certainly we can assure that.
So one last question. I mean, before we get on to the couple of the questions that we have, how does an incubator like GINSERV play a significant role? You came here, you started with only about 3 or 4 seats, and today you are about 70 odd seats team, and you also talked about how few connections that helped you to from GINSERV helped you to kind of look at some of the opportunities, and something this has worked really wonderful for you. So what is your message? Because a lot of startups kind of tend to struggle out there, trying to do their own thing, but this kind of incubation environment. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned during the course of this conversation, there has been many instances where we felt, GINSERV's association has helped us. Like, even in terms of, even during product building. I mean, the access to companies who have experience outside of our core domain. I mean, or it could be marketing, it could be any other space. You have free access to that resource. I mean, you can always, you meet them on in your common forums in a tea, we're having a, so it gives you that environment where you are not just by yourself. You have an opportunity to meet your fellow incubators and
Correct.
other guys who can help give you a different perspective or thought. So that really, and also engage in times of need. We have this within GINSERV. It's a forum where we can ask people, okay, I'm stuck here, can you help me, or help me with these things, or help me with this. So that gives you that ability to collaborate much more freely, and take the services of other fellow things. So that is one aspect. And also, you all being an accelerator, it also gives you other opportunities, like in this case, access to investors or funding networks who can help identify things. And we, like I said, some of these things actually got triggered through these interactions with us. And the mentorship, like, if you can actually, if you are in the early stage and you want somebody who have gone through this process earlier, would want to come and give you some advice or inputs, or give you some different perspective, that is also another area that GINSERV, as a collaboration institute, gives you that flexibility for that. And we have thoroughly enjoyed this journey with GINSERV, because, as I said, it's not just a fantastic place, it's in the heart of the city. It also gives you enough freedom to interact with other things, other fellow incubators.
Great. So thank you. That's really, I think that gives opens up a lot of minds, basically, who are on their own startup journeys. So let's take a few questions. I think the first question from Sumit Handu: what is your take on overcoming the challenge of IoT devices not in insurance reimbursements? And do you, that is, access to this technology is limited to private hospitals? Yes. Do you see any policy change in next 3 to 5 years?
Mm, okay. So yeah, so this has been one area where eventually the burden of this service or this solution should not be carried entirely by the patient. I mean, okay, so that is one challenge that we have faced, and the insurance, which the patient may avail, does not approve of use of such devices as of today. So that is a challenge that they can't really claim insurance for having used this service as part of their care. So this is always a challenge, and as of now, there is only one thing is, I mean, there are many such services and things which is outside the scope of your
Insurance.
insurance claims. And the only thing is, there has to be some policy from to allow for solutions which are much more, once it has probably gone through a regulatory body, and somebody has even within the home country. And if you are deploying it in India, you need to make sure that that home country's regulatory body approves that this is having its certain efficacy and things which is probably considered by insurance to be included as part of their package. So of course there are some policy level things that needs to happen, and it's not a not the vendors problem alone, but it has to be done in much more at a policy level, at a hospital institutional level. And then maybe not entirely pass the burden of this charge on the patient, if at all, as an interim. We have to, someone has to absorb and keep this. I mean, one of the things I talked about cost effectiveness is that we need to make sure that we are in a volume market. We don't have to charge patient entirely on this thing, just charge for the service he has availed on the using the system. So there are obviously policy decisions, institutional takeaways. I mean, they have to intervene and take some decisions here, but at the same time, vendors' responsibility as well to keep it, make it more cost effective. So
So is there some kind of vendors like you who work in this industry? Have they some kind of a forum or a association where you can kind of influence this outcome?
I am not really aware of such a forum, but certainly I think one way is to, put a proposal to. I mean, always insurance bodies would want to keep tab of how it's not about how healthy a patient can be. I mean, they want to make sure that the patient is healthy. I mean, it's not just so that they can lessen the burden of reimbursements to the as well. So it is a positive thing on them to actually adopt these technologies to make sure that patients are healthy. I mean, so that they can avoid claims and other stuff, right? I mean, so on the premise, so it is in a way, it benefits the insurance agencies as well. But they, at some point, someone have to take that call of to say, okay, so maybe we have to engage with institutional such bodies who
Yeah.
represent the insurance and convince them, the vendors. And there is today no such body of vendor association of medical devices today, which can make a common representation there.
Good. So let's create one then. Okay. So the other question is that I think you answered this, but let's go ahead and ask you this. Would you have stayed the career path or still built your own company?
Okay, I mean, certainly I wouldn't have stayed the career path. That was very clear in that point. But I was not sure what I would do. I mean, probably at some point later I would have made a call to, to become an entrepreneur. But at that time, and assuming that I didn't have this Vios idea coming forward at that time. Okay, so this is, which is in that perspective, yes, certainly that would have been be the case. But imagine the situation 6 years down the line was very different from what it is now. I mean, I'm sure I have gone through this journey myself. 2013 was not what we see in 2021 or 2020 for that matter. Is that there's an enormous amount of access to resources, and it is mind-boggling set of investors, angels, and other guys who are willing to support you. I mean, and this mushrooming of incubators like GINSERV. I mean, everybody has the thing. So that was not at that time so much prevalent. I'm not talking about. Sorry, I'm just talking about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, where we didn't have the same level of thing now. Okay, so it would have been difficult to do something, but I am sure that I had the network and people around me, and to support and nurture any idea that I had that time, would have been I would have taken that journey as well.
So now moving on to the last question. Um, Thank you for sharing your journey, sir. Please enlighten us as to how we can use the existing software that's open source in medical scenario, especially economics wise and encompassing all. I think basically it is how do you kind of use the open source softwares to drive down the pricing and then drive down the costs.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. In fact, even we have to leverage as much as possible of what it is today. And but the only thing is we have to make sure that the solutions and software or platform that are out there are have gone through the same process. I mean, if you see, there is already a process in FDA which allows the use of open source software. Okay, but it has to make, you have to make sure that it actually meets the expectation of the so the allow certainly it is a viable option. You can, in order to accelerate your own product development process, it's encouraged that you explore and use any open software which is, and mature it to a level where it can be used in such like critical applications.
No, that's a great answer because what I hear is that you telling that you need to kind of look at the regulatory requirement and what is, or from a certification standpoint, what softwares can really kind of be used, or what can be the kind of foundational blocks, and then based on that you can go about picking your tools and various resources. That's
Yeah,
what
see,
you're.
yeah. So what I'm saying is, FDA doesn't say that everything has to be done in-house. Okay, it only says, do you have a process in place to know what you're going to use in your product, and do we have a way to measure and the maturity of the components that you're using, and do you have a way to make sure that the product you're using does not impact the solution or product as a whole. You are very much free to adopt open source and engage, as long as you make sure your product as a whole meets the other expectations that the FDA may have in terms of safety, compliance, standards. You have to make sure that that part is not diluted, but you are very much free to accelerate your development using available options, but you have to stay within these guidelines, right? So I mean, I would say always set your bar high, take the vision of getting approval from a approved body so that it is much more accepted. But the journey along that, you are much more, you can define your process. You can define, this is how I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to have design controls, this is what I'm going to do my process. And you are adopt whatever resources are available, things that you have, and ensure that it meets the expectation of the overall product or solution.
Great. So I think that brings us to the end, and we have hope we have addressed all the questions. And as Ganesh mentioned earlier, that like he's open to interact with any of the startups out there. So if someone would like to have a chat with Ganesh, they can reach out on connect@ginserv.in with specific subject saying, then we will facilitate that interaction. So thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ganesh. I have enjoyed this 1.5 hour. It's just the time just flew, and it's been so inspirational. And we will have a lot to kind of there are still a lot of questions that I would like to kind of come and ask you. This hope it has been really eye-opening kind of a session for many of our listeners. And, thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
your
thank you,
time.
thank you to you as well, Girish, and rest of the people. I my best wishes for rest of your series going forward, and the program as a whole. And also thanks to all the audience who have patiently gone through, listen. If you have any comments or suggestions or any questions, you are most welcome to approach me through probably through Girish. Yeah.
Thank you. We have enjoyed it. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.